Hey guys, so today I'm going to be repairing this vintage super dehumidifier. This is the one I found at our house when we moved in, and I made a video on this last year when I first found it, and I also made a video earlier this summer, and I told myself that because I delayed it last year, this is going to be the year I finish the project. I have a new motor that I got for it, and just as a recap, if you didn't see the previous video, the fan motor in this unit is completely shot. The bearings are so worn out that the rotor actually drags against the stator when it runs. Alarm's going off. I'll be right back. Alright, that was just the cooking alarm. I had to shut it off. But anyways, I got a new motor for it, so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to replace the motor. And I'm also going to clean out the insides. There's some rust that I need to take care of. And I'll just give it a bit of a general cleaning to get this unit functional again. So let's get started. I'm not sure how long this video will be, but hopefully it will be watchable. So anyways, alright, let's get started. So just to go over the issues this unit has, the biggest issue is the fan motor has very worn bearings. So I got a new motor for it. This is a Rotom Canada branded motor. I try to match the specs with the current motor, and this is the closest one I could find. It's funny because Rotom is literally motor spelled backwards. So anyways, took a look at this and it looks okay. I'm going to oil the bearings in here just to make sure this thing has enough lubrication. Then we'll go in here and we'll swap it out, and I'll also clean out the blades and the coils in there, although they're pretty darn clean. You can see through them. There's some rust here. There's major rust back here on the float switch. Oop. So I'll need to take care of that. The other issue is I broke the grill here by accident when I was making the first video. I've got the piece there, so I'm going to just super glue it back on, and that should hold. I'm also going to use some washers when I put the grill back on, just to prevent the screw from putting a lot of strain there. So, alright, so that's the list of the issues this thing has. Let's get started. I'm going to start off by oiling the motor in this one, and I'll swap out the old fan motor with the new one. Alright, so here's what we're working with. The motor does spin freely when you spin it by hand. So to test it, I disconnected it from these connections here, and I hooked up a cord to it. And when you apply power, this is what happens. It just sits there and hums. It just will not go. And that's actually because let me disconnect the power. That's actually the rotor rubbing against the stator and causing a bind, so the motor will not spin when the power is applied. So the bearings on this thing are beyond savable, and I don't have a replacement for it because this motor is pretty much like 40 years old. So I'm just going to put the new motor in here, and hopefully that'll fix the problem. Wow, check this out. This motor seems to be pretty well made. Besides that, which seems to be like surface rust on the rotor there. I'm not too pleased about that, but it's got cast cooling fins on the rotor, a ton of oil holding wick around both of the bearings, which are unfortunately not very well saturated, but it can hold a lot of oil. Seems to be wound pretty well. There's the thermal fuse, nicely varnished. Yeah, seems to be a pretty decent motor. So I'm going to apply some oil in here, and we'll get to the reassembly. So these controls are actually mounted to the cabinet, and I'm not sure how the bulb is attached, and I'd rather not break it just by trying to force it out of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disconnect the wiring here, because they're all connected by wire nuts and a crimp connector. So I should be able to just simply disconnect the controls and remove the cabinet without needing to take the controls off of here. So the knob came off, and there are 2 screws behind it that are holding the humidistat in place, but I'm not sure of the bulb, so I'm just going to disconnect the bulb from the circuit here, and I'll have to cut the zip tie here. Alright, so I got the wires disconnected and labeled so I can reconnect them later. So I'm going to remove the cabinet all the way. Alright, so here's the dehumidifier partially disassembled. I took the cover off, and you can see now the internal components. Now here's one thing that's kind of bothering me. The fan appears to be mounted in the most inconvenient way possible. These screws come in from the other side, which is blocked by the refrigeration system. Same goes with the screws down here, which is behind all of the coils inside of there. So it seems like I'll have to remove the coil to access the fan, which is just going to be a completely tedious task. But, you know, if that's what I need to do, that's what I'm going to do. So I'll see if I can figure out an easier way to do it, but if not, that's the way we'll have to go. Here's some information that I just found on the side of the unit. It's got the model number, the maximum operating pressure, and also this stamped information that says 8521. Now down here on the compressor, it says 8631. So maybe these are date codes. I'm not going to be too confident about it, but maybe this part was made in 85 and the compressor was made in 86, so this unit is from like 86 or something. I'm not sure, I can't say that with confidence, but that's a possibility. Also, I was able to pull the tab off of the float switch and check out the level of rust on this thing. It's so thick that you can actually see the buildup on it. It's crazy. And there's the normal thickness. There's that rust. That's nuts. And there's the switch, which is functional. So I'll have to put this on the wire wheel and try to save this. I'm not sure how bad the corrosion is, but it's pretty bad. Well, I discovered something new, and it's actually great news. And it turns out that the plate up here, this piece and this piece, which was sitting down here below the coils, are actually not attached to the rest of the coil assembly here. The coils are only held on by 4 screws on each side, while these 2 up here are just for this piece, which I'm assuming is there just to help direct the air through the coils. So that's great news. I don't have to worry about getting the coil assembly out. I'll just have to take the 2 screws out up here. Now I have full access to the fan mount screws, which is great. So I'm very relieved that I don't have to touch the coil assembly here. So let's keep going, and I'll try to see if I can get the fan out. Sweet, so now I have full access to the 4 screws that are holding the fan mount in place. The only issue I'm seeing now is that the bottom screw is a little tight to reach with a screwdriver because of the coil here, so I may need to go in with a wrench. Mission accomplished. I got the fan motor out of the dehumidifier. It was a bit tougher than I thought it was going to be. I had to actually take the screw out, pull this side down so I could reach that screw, and I had to do the same on the other side to reach that screw. But the important part is I got the screw or the motor out, and that's good. I should be able to put the new motor in and make it work again. Alright, I got the blades off. It was very stuck onto the shaft, so I had to stand on the brackets and just tug it with all my might, and it finally popped off. It's very dirty. I'm going to wash this. My hand's a mess. But here's the motor. Now this is a Canadian-made Electrohome motor. Here's some specs of it. And it's a pretty neat motor. It's a shame it's that the bearings are so worn out. Wow. You can see the movement of the play. That's really, really bad. But I'm going to keep this motor because it's really neat, and cosmetically it's in pretty good shape. So, yeah. I'm going to take this off the mount, and hopefully we'll be able to reuse the screws and hardware for the new motor. Well, here's one last look at this motor before I put it in storage. Electrohome motor. It's enclosed on the back, but on the front it's open. Man, that bearing play is so bad. Well, that's what happens when you run the fan without oil for so long. Man, it's so worn out. It's a shame because the windings look very clean, and it looks like it ran fine up until the bearings gave out. So that's a shame, but hopefully the new motor will be a suitable replacement for this one. Alright, here's a comparison between the new motor and the old one. The overall thickness is quite a bit higher on the newer one, and also the stator is thicker on the newer one, even though the power draw on this one is 0.8 amps, and this one is 0.9. So hopefully this one will work. The shaft is also a bit longer, so I'm a bit worried that this might hit the coil. So what I might need to do is add some spacers on the bracket there to pull the fan motor out away from the coils. So I'll have to see how this fits on. I got the bracket straightened out. It was a bit crooked, so I had to unbend one side. It's about equal now. So I'm going to install the new motor. Now it goes on this way. The longer slots are facing up at an angle, and I want this to go on this way, and that should be a good fit. The box came with the nuts to hold it in place, so that's good. I'm gonna need 2 hands for this. Alright. Well, that's great. And these nuts have little, I'm not sure what the proper term is, but they have these little teeth on them, so they bite into the metal and it won't loosen up over time. They're kind of like lock nuts, but they use a different system of locking. So that's pretty good. The fit looks great in there. So I'm going to get these tightened up. Alright, I'm going to do this off camera because I want to torque it down properly. Alright, so here's where we are at now. It's quite a mess on the floor, but I've got the plastic parts here that I can rinse in water. The blades, the grills, and the bucket. I'm going to take that off because the screw's metal, but I'm going to get these parts rinsed because while the parts are drying, I can work on the reassembly and getting these parts. The cabinet is metal, so I'm not going to just dunk the whole thing in water, but I can get this cleaned because it's quite dusty. So let's get that done. Oh, that's gross, man. Oh. check this out. I just noticed it when I was rinsing the blades, and right here, see that rough patch there? I think what they did was they balanced the blades by shaving off some of the plastic from the heavier blade, which was this one. You see that rough patch there, which feels like some sort of like a grinder mark. And I'm pretty sure that's factory. So that's pretty cool. None of the other blades have that. So that's pretty interesting. Alright, so I'm going to now repair the break in the plastic here. I've got the broken pieces here. There's a little accident that happened when I filmed the first video where the grill just fell off of the dehumidifier and snapped the screw hole. So I'm going to be using some heavy duty super glue. So I'm going to repair this. Now this super glue is extremely strong, so you do not want to get these on your hand, obviously. So I'm going to try to apply a tiny dab on the plastic surface. Alright. Okay. So I got that attached. Now I'm going to grab something. Just carefully smear the glue. And this stuff also dries extremely fast too, so there we go. In about a few minutes, it'll be already bonded real strong. Because super glue, what it does often with plastics is it chemically melts the plastic pieces together, so it's a very strong bond. Here's the bigger piece that goes in here. Let me check how it fits. Nope, it goes on this way. And this was just the part where the plastic deformed over time and it's a bit split there. Okay, so I just need to apply plastic on, or the glue on the bottom. Let me hold it this way, it's probably better. Come on. Maybe a bit more on here. Alright, got enough glue. Carefully position it. Squeeze it down. Okay, so the last 30 minutes or so I've been just straightening out some of the fins that are on the coils. This area was kind of bad, but I got it mostly straightened out. It's not perfect, but at least on this side it's mostly open now, so the air can get through. Unfortunately, on the other side, it's a bit more trickier because this coil is in the way, and there's also quite a few more damaged areas in here, which is definitely going to restrict a lot of air. So I'll need to get that fixed somehow, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I might be able to reach in through the coils here with the screwdriver, flathead, and just kind of gently bend it back into shape, but that's going to be the next task to complete. Alright, I've just been working on this unit, mostly just cleaning it up. Here's the compressor. I polished up the paint on it. Looks pretty darn good. There's some tape residue that's like really dried solid, so I wasn't able to fully remove that. But my goal here is just to get the whole thing running again, not so much to make it look good. I'll have to clean the switch. Forgot to do that. But yeah, the coils are now, or the fins rather, are straightened out. I straightened them out as best as I could. Enough that the air can still go through the back. You can see that you can see through them pretty well. This area was really bent. It's mostly straightened out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the casters here, because all four of them, the swivel is so dry and rusty that the wheels just don't want to rotate. They spin fine, but they just don't swivel, so that's what I'm going to work on. These are actually held on by this tab, which is pressed down to prevent the caster from sliding out. So it's a very simple way to remove it. I'm just going to have to bend this tab up, and the whole caster just should slide out this way. So let's get started on that. Alright, here's one of them. Oh man, the ball bearings in there are just so dry. You can just hear it locks up too. So I'm going to try to clean that out and repack the area inside with some grease. Yeah, that's stiff. The wheels spin fine though, so it's okay. So I'm going to service them one at a time, just so I don't have to worry about setting the whole dehumidifier up on something. Alright, I greased it up and it's pretty smooth now. Hopefully it's fixed up now. So I'm going to reinstall it. I think it goes on this way. Like that. I'm not going to push these tabs on yet because I just want to make sure I can get all of the casters nice and smooth before I tighten it again. I just finished up the casters and now they're much smoother than they were before. They're still not perfect, they're kind of squeaky still, and some of them still fail to swivel properly, but it's an improvement from where it was before. Forget that squeaking, I just fixed it with a bit of oil. This wheel was squeaking, so applied some oil there, nice and quiet. Some of them are still kind of locking up, but it's nice and quiet now, so now we're going to get to the reassembly. Alright, so I'm going to now reassemble the fan unit. So I've got the motor here, the original blades here, which I'm going to reuse because it's, it's not affected. So I'm going to just slide it on to the shaft. So here's the problem with the new motor. Well, it's not exactly a problem, but it's like more of a safety precaution. The motor on this one is thicker than the original motor, so when it sits in the shroud, the blades are much closer to the fins than they would have been with the original motor. And obviously these fans, when they get up to speed, the blades could slightly bend backwards, and I'm just kind of worried that they might strike the fins, which would be disastrous. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using the original screws to put the bracket back on, I'm going to use machine screws with nuts, and I'm going to add spacers in between it, so when the fan unit's sitting in here, instead of being right up against the plate here, it's going to be, distanced a bit by a couple nuts, and hopefully that should give it enough room for it to be happy in there. So we're going to try to work on that. Okay, so here's the current plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm using a 632 screw and a washer. It's going to go through here, and in between the bracket and the plate up here, there's going to be a couple of these washers, or these nuts rather, that are going to act as spacers, and then I'm going to add a nut at the back to secure it in place. So hopefully that'll work. I haven't decided how many of these I'll need in between, but I'm guessing maybe like 2 or 3 should be enough to give it enough spacing. Okay, so here's an update. I got the fan mounted back in the shroud, and that's looking really good. So in terms of the spacing, I decided to go with 3 nuts in between the bracket and the frame, and that gave it enough clearance between the fins and the blade tips. So I'm happy about that. And there are washers and nuts holding the bracket in place. And the second one here is just acting like a jam nut to prevent the nuts from getting loose from the vibration. Same goes with the bottom bracket there. Yeah, the fan's here. I checked the clearance between the blades and the shroud to make sure it's not hitting. Bearings are nice and smooth now, so it's pretty much ready to go. I'm very excited to get it working again. I'm just gonna strip the wire here, hook it up to power, and we're gonna test it before I put the cabinet back on. Alright, so I have it temporarily hooked up to the same power cord as the one I had before, just to test the fan alone. So we'll plug it in and see if it runs. Nice. Oh wow, that's a lot of power. That's great. Perfect. Alright, so I can now reassemble the unit, and hopefully we'll have a perfectly running dehumidifier again. And just to be safe, I'm going to do a current test on it to make sure it's drawing under spec or at spec. The motor is rated at 0.8 amps, so I'm going to plug it in and hopefully we'll be able to see the result here. Alright, so on screen, here's startup. .7 amps, so that's great. That's under spec by 0.1 amp. Perfect. So that motor's not overloaded, which is great. Alright, the cabinet's back in place. Still need to dust it and rewire it. But there's the new motor, it's all in place. And also I wanted to show you guys the information sticker on the back here. So here's the super information. This one is a model SDH17R-3, 3.5 amps, free on 12. But when I found it, this sticker was actually put on over this one. Check this out. This is a model DH17R-3, and it's an Air King model. And it says made in Canada, but based on this sticker, which I've seen on my Lasko made superfans, I believe this unit was made by Lasko. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know that, but this sticker just screams Lasko, so that's what I'm going to go with. A Lasko made super, a dehumidifier from the 80s. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to put the knob back on. I got to clean that out. And put the grill back on. And we'll give it a first test with it fully assembled. Alright, so I have it rewired, the cabinet's back together. The only thing missing now is the front grille and the bucket, but I just want to test it to make sure everything works. So here it goes with the new motor, all wired up. Here goes nothing. Nice! Oh yeah, that's pulling in a lot of air from the back. It's already starting to get cold down here. Alright, so I'm going to run it for a little bit, and I'll come back with an update a few minutes later. Alright, the coil back here is already starting to ice up, so that's a good sign. I'm just going to turn it off. You can hear the refrigerant running through, well, back here, more like. That's great. So I'm going to put the grill back on, and we're going to be calling this project complete. Dang, I only had this machine running for about 30 seconds, and it's already collecting a ton of water. I had to put a t-shirt on there to catch all the drips, but man, this thing gets cold fast. R12 is some great stuff. Shame it's so environmentally unfriendly, and they banned it, but you know, these old machines that still have R12, it's good stuff, man. Alright, so I got the front grille back on. Here's the bucket. Now the only thing I need to do now is to get the bucket full switch de-rusted. It normally sits in there in that little hole, but you guys saw in the beginning of this video that it was just completely covered in rust, so I'm going to clean that off later. Not today because it's like 9 o'clock in the night, but this should allow me to test it now. So we're gonna plug it in. Hopefully we'll be able to collect some water. Well, we already did, but with the bucket and the grill. So here is the final test for this video. Here it goes. Oh yeah, that's moving a lot of air. Getting cold already. Oh yeah. Goes. Sweet. I'll watch one more droplet fall. right. That's great. We'll shut it off. Alright, so that concludes this repair video of this vintage super dehumidifier. It was probably a long video, I'm gonna have to edit all of this. But hope you guys enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.